We're floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. Hi, welcome to the Wingman Show. My name is Drew Brown. We hope to inspire, entertain, and learn something so we can all make this world a better place for our children. I'd like to introduce to you somebody who's my friend, my wingman, my main man, and I have a wingman watching my back, Dr. Paul Thompson. Hey, Paul, what's happening?
Oh, not much. Hello, everyone. I'm Paul Thompson, and you just heard from Mr. Drew Brown, Dark Gable. He's the American dream. He's the man, the myth, the legend, the pilot's pilot, the role model's role model, and most importantly, his royal fullness. How are you doing today, Mr. Dark Gable?
I'm doing great, and I'm glad I'm full of knowledge, Paul. I'm glad I'm full of knowledge. Well, we're going to have a great show right now. Check this out. Dr. Paul, how are you, my brother, my brother?
I'm doing well today. It's a little bit cloudy, but it's supposed to be sunny in the afternoon. I'm looking forward to it. Well,
it doesn't look sunny behind you. That is a bomb picture. And I asked you what that was, and you said it was an MD-11. Well, both of us flew 777s, and it's so pretty, I'm just going to say it's a 777. That's a beautiful...
Yeah, it's probably one of the best pictures I've ever seen. I don't know who did it. There was some serious
serious artwork. People are watching on YouTube, because then they get to see it. First of all, let's welcome all the new listeners to the Wingman Show, and all the old listeners. Thank you so much for sticking with us. And if anybody would like to write a review on Apple Podcasts, we'd really appreciate it. We got a great Wingman Show for you today, and I have a great Wingman story for you. We're going old school here, back in the time. I think you'll like my wingman, Dr.
Okay, look forward to it.
Well, good. We'll start off with my Peleton story with Chelsea Jackson Roberts. She gave me some meditation this morning, some deep thinking. I was on my Shatki Mat, and I just, we don't get paid. We have no advertisers yet, but that Shatki is really helping my back. It really is. That Shatki Mat is helping my back. Katrina and I have been working out on the Peleton. For some reason, my bike is not connecting, but I'm still doing it, and there's no excuse. I got to call them, see how their customer service is.
When you do these Peleton things, are these live? Are these live or are they recorded? I don't know.
They are live, but they're recorded. In other words, I could schedule a time when they're doing it live and be kind of interactive. Not really, but you and 3,000 people are on it. But I don't do that. I just get the recordings.
Okay, yeah, I know you're up at 4 a.m. I didn't know if they were doing stuff at 4 a.m.
No, they don't do it that early. And I tried to stay up late to watch the Memphis Grizzlies whoop that trick. But they didn't get to do it. And we were just talking about that. Ja Morant, who is, I'm telling you, this kid is the star of the future. He was on the bench for the last 2 games, 2 or 3.
Last 2, wasn't it? Last 2?
Yes. Ever since that guy pulled his knee. The problem is, I think that knee was bad.
Yeah, I think so too.
So anyway, so I did that. I went to Costco yesterday and bought a $1,700 gazebo that John and I have to put up on my dock.
Gazebo. Okay.
I'm going to have a sunshade on it and everything. So it'll look pretty cool down there.
How big is
it at Costco?
How big is it going to be? How many people can
14 by 12.
Okay.
The dock is 16 by 12, so it'll look nice.
Okay, cool.
You know what was in the news this week? Really big. Roe versus Wade. Roe v. Wade. And that's about abortions, correct? Yes. Well, you and I have performed abortions. Except
you need to qualify that there for the authorities.
Did you think I was just going to stop and not say anything else?
I don't know.
Dr. Paul and I have. Well, that's the funny part of it. We've done abortions. I need to say it quick, right, so they don't just cut it right there. In airplanes, because we have aborted takeoffs before. And that's what it was called, or that's what it is called, an aborted takeoff. And that's what we're going to talk about, because I think that both of us agree that as far as Roe v. Wade,
I think women should vote on that issue. I have no right to vote on that issue. So that's how I feel. What do you think, Doc?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has a say, but ultimately, I think it does go down to the woman.
Good. Now, tell me about your abortions.
Well, abort, yeah. Sometimes you'll hear the term abort. I've never really heard the term abortions in a cockpit, unless it was.
Only I could come up with something stupid.
Yeah, only you could come up with
Dr. Paul. No, that's what I was asking you. That was the question. I said, you and I have aborted takeoffs in our lives.
Right.
And I said, does that mean that we have performed an abortion?
Yeah.
That's how this whole thing started.
Yeah, if you want to play, be with the word police.
English. It's called English.
English. Okay. All right. You basically you've stopped doing something. You interrupted the process. You stopped the process. You change the process. And sometimes you abort takeoffs. Yeah, you can abort a takeoff. You can abort a landing, and there are many times there are good reasons for doing that. They typically involve safety. You're about to do something, about to take off or land, which is a dynamic movement.
Give me an example that you had.
I've never done a high speed abort. I've done a couple of very low speed aborts when things weren't quite right. And the way it works in a transport category airplane is that once you put the power on the thing and get it going at a good speed, if you go fast enough, it's better to take a problem that develops late in the air than to try to solve it on the runway on the ground, where you likely run out of concrete and end up off the runway in pieces, maybe in flames. If it's something very serious and you can't fly, you stop. But there are two speeds. There's one called V1 and V2. V1 is the takeoff decision speed. You're deciding whether or not you should go or not. And that's very low. We used to have it around 80 knots. 80 knots happens very quickly. Rotation speeds, when you get going, and there's a V2, which is like a takeoff safety speed. If you lost an engine, you had an engine failure, as long as you got that speed, you've got enough airflow going over the wings for the thing to fly. But sometimes, so to decide whether or not you want to stop a takeoff, you need to do that very, very early. And I typically would practice that at the end of the runway. I'd go through in my mind with the procedures. I'd do it maybe 2-3 times. Just about every takeoff, not everyone, just about everyone. Because if it happens, it's going to be a surprise. And there are many cases of folks that aborted the takeoff a little too late and ended up off the runway. And a lot of people have been killed if they went airborne and sorted out the problem. They could have landed a few moments later. So it's kind of I call it the $1 billion decision, where you might have you've got maybe 2.5 seconds or less to make this decision. I call it the $1 billion because if you look at the cost of the airplane, which might be $400 million, price of the cargo, which might be $100 million, and the price of the insurance claims should something happen, which might be another $500 million, I come up with $1 billion. So that's part of the reason that people are paid a little bit more than what you might make at Home Depot or doing pest control. All those are important jobs, but sometimes a bad decision or an inappropriate movement at a critical time can have tremendous effects. And the same thing can be with landing. Sometimes you can't land. You can't see the runway. You need to see it. I don't see anything. The weather's bad. Go around. Don't go too low. You might hit something like a mountain or the ground. So you need to abort the landing if the conditions aren't right. Maybe the gear aren't down. Maybe the airplane won't stop. So you got problems that may just develop just late. You're just about to land and something dynamic just happens. It just happens. It's just not your day. Last time I did go around was for wind shear. We could talk about that later on. That was kind of a memorable one for a number of reasons. But there are reasons sometimes we start something and we got to stop it. And you're better off stopping than continuing.
Well, that's true in life. That's a very good description of an aborted takeoff.
But, we flew things that you could not abort. We flew off aircraft carriers. And I remember somebody saying, if you put your brakes on full, you would only lose 2 knots off the end of that carrier. That's how fast it would shoot you up. You'd have no tires, but you're going flying. And the thing that I learned about aborted takeoffs, now you have, believe it or not, people, we have both seen a bunch of aborted takeoffs in a simulator. And trust me, they are very, very visual and they are very, very realistic. So we practice that all the time, especially high-speed ones. And you see that when you make a decision, and this is what I've learned in flying, actually, I apply it to driving, I apply it to life sometimes. But after that decision, if you go back on that decision and remake that decision, it's a different decision. Right. So once you abort a takeoff, that's your decision. Don't try to start going fly again, and vice versa. Once you've made the decision to go flying, you cannot, and that's why it's at a certain speed and not a certain feeling. I mean, we have numbers, and in the cockpit, Captain Paul, tell them that we're talking to each other. So there are certain things the first officer says to the captain, actually the person non-flying to the flying guy. We give out speeds. We give out certain numbers. We give out speeds, and those are the decision points. So Roe v. Wade, no, God bless it, that's life. But you and I have dealt with a lot of life doing those very dangerous maneuvers. But we have seen aborted takeoffs. And that's how we do it. Once on the Nimitz, now let me tell you about non-aborted takeoffs, because those black ass nights, Dr. Paul. I mean, the ones that you really don't want to go flying in. Mm-hmm. Well, I think last night tanker on one of them, and I got up in that jet and we did our checks and everything. And once we started a taxi, remember, you see nothing but flashlights. A guy in front of you, you don't see him, but you see the ones. And I'm not kidding. That stuff is scarier than sometimes flying.
Yeah, it's like a mime show. The hands going.
Yes, except death is the loss. It's not like boo, boo, boo. You lost 100 points. You die. So anyway, as I pushed up the throttle to start my taxi, I had a delay. I'm not lying, Dr. Paul. Mm-hmm. I know it wasn't in my mind. And I didn't want to go flying in the first damn place, but this delay in the engine. So the newer jets now, for people who are listening, when you put up the throttle, you get instantaneous power. Dr. Paul's jet was worse than mine. In an A7, when you put up the power, you didn't get instantaneous, but a pilot knows that, so he figures out when that power comes. And in A6, it's a little bit better than that. But this one, I was putting it up and nothing was happening. And that's the last thing I want is a bad engine on a black ass night. And so I waved my maintenance guy over and he came up and he was working the engine. I love Petty Officer Terry Guy, who is a friend till today. Anyway, he was the top maintenance guy. And I said, this is not right. And he tried it a couple times and he looked at me and said, yeah, I'm not liking it either. Boop, that's all I needed. Boop, done. Mm-hmm. So that was my aborted takeoff. Because like I said, once you get on that catapult, there's no aborted takeoff.
Yeah, if it starts going, you're there. It's like being a rock in a slingshot and the rock decides it doesn't want to go anywhere.
That's very true. Guess where I was? Remember I told you last show I was going to New Orleans. Uh-huh. I went to New Orleans Jazz Festival, dog. I had a great time. My wife and I, my daughter, Lori, my son-in-law, Nick, and my granddaughter. We had a great time. My son, Drew, and Heather were there.
Oh, good.
My daughter, Heather was there, but they didn't stay for the Jazz Festival. And Drew Brown the Fifth, got to see him again.
Good. Was Drew Brown the Fifth playing? Was he playing an instrument since he's so advanced?
Not yet.
Okay.
I might teach him how to play harmonica. I played a harmonica. So I might have to teach him a little bit, some blues harp. But anyway, at the Jazz Festival, it was crazy, Dr. Paul. It's like people hadn't been out for 2-3 years. Well, guess what?
That's right.
But there were hundreds of thousands of people there. We got to see Frankie Beverly and Mays. I know you made fun of me, but I was hanging with the mayor of New Orleans. And you will see LaToya, you'll see a picture of her right now on the
Okay.
YouTube. And
Okay.
so it was a great time. It was a great time.
I'm sure
A
the
lot of
food,
people down there.
I'm sure the food was good as usual.
Oh, the food was kicking. The food was kicking. I mean, it's not really good for you, but once in a while you gotta just have a little bit of that's what
Yeah.
life's all about.
The poor
As
boy.
long as you do your exercise and you're eating right 95% of the time, you can do what you want to do. Remember, be happy and have fun. So who else did I see at Jazz Fest? Cool and the Gang. I saw Erica Badu.
Oh yeah. That's just,
She's a little strange, Dr. Paul.
we're all a little strange, but I've heard that.
But she's a little accentuated strange. I'm definitely strange.
Yes.
But this one, I mean, the people, so we were in the mayor section, which was really up close, but the people right behind us had been there for hours waiting on her. And they were all her big fans. And they were like saying she might not even come.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that wouldn't be something. And then the next thing we know, the band starts playing, and I'm saying, okay, she's here. They said, no, that doesn't mean anything. Last concert, the band played the whole concert, and then that was it. Oh my God. But then all of a sudden you smelled something. They saged the area with that sage.
Okay.
And all her fans got excited. Oh, they won't sage unless she's here. So anyway, we saw her. Trombone Shorty. Oh my God. I didn't know what a performer he was. We saw Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. But Trombone Shorty, man, he can blow.
You don't see people play the trombone much now. I mean, when I see that, I think of New Orleans when I hear trombone.
Oh, no doubt. Trombone Shorty, but he plays trumpet. He sings, they dance. It's a whole show. It's a big time show. And they were on the main stage the last night of the Jazz Fest. I had a great time, and I love my New Orleans. That's where I went to my Southern University of New Orleans, my HBCU for life. So I had a great time. Now, I told you little baby Drew was there.
Yes.
God bless, baby Drew still breastfeeds. Dr. Paul, talk to me about baby shortage food.
I didn't know that there was a big problem until this week. It's a big shortage in formula, baby formula. And I think it was caused by a big recall that Abbott Laboratories had, a massive recall in February, which I didn't pay attention to. So apparently the supplies are down and the supply chain of everything is still kind of broken. And long story short is there's not enough formula to go around. So much so that they're talking about the president possibly introducing the Defense Production Act to make everyone, make the powers that be just produce more formula. They talk about getting some from different countries.
Yeah, the people that make your coffee creamer will now be making baby formula.
It could be like the mask. They did that with the mask. So, I think the big thing is that it affects people who were maybe on the lower end of the economic spectrum more so. Half the people that use baby formula, they say, are in the WIC program, women, infants, and children. And they don't have a lot of options. There's some people who are desperate for formula and they're driving miles and miles, to find some on the shelves. And with the cost of fuel, the cost of gas so high, a lot of poor people are really stretched.
I heard they said there's an announcement not to mix it with water, not to make your own, which is kind of weird. They're warning against trying to make your own baby formula, and they don't want you to dilute it. And I want to know what happened to breastfeeding, because first of all, you need to be healthy to breastfeed your child.
Right.
And that means you have to give up a couple things. But breastfeeding seems to be the healthiest if you have a healthy diet. And I'm glad baby Drew's going to be, is breastfeeding. God bless it. But what happened to that?
Yeah, I thought that was the standard, but I don't know, maybe people, they're working, they're busy. They've got multiple
Don't you
children.
see the problem here? You're working, you're busy. Maybe you shouldn't have had a child.
Could be. A little too late now.
I know, but babies need to eat. And so it's not just babies all over the world that are having problems. We have some problems that look like other countries right here in our country.
True.
And like you said, the poor people are affected when there were shortages. Rich people, this is just news that they listen to every day.
Correct.
Gas prices don't affect them. Nothing affects them like that.
Correct. Yeah.
The only thing that they care about is the stock market. Talking about the stock market, why don't we take a Ford break, since the Wingman Show bought some stock in Ford. Can you give me an update, Dr. Paul?
Last time I checked, it was down a couple bucks.
So we're losing.
As of Friday.
Well, here is a great point I want to make. We're not losing. You don't lose unless you sell.
Mm-hmm.
You're not losing anything.
That's true.
So people have to understand the ups and downs of the market. We didn't do this one-day trading. We weren't trying to make $1 in an hour, which is called day trading. We're doing this for the long term. And sometimes when stocks go down, that's the time to buy, Dr. Paul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're buying the dip, as they say. Buying the dip. In the hope that it'll inflate sometime in the future. So if your time horizon is like a day or an hour, well, you're kind of limited. And some people do day trading. I don't know too many people who do just serious day trading now. That was a big thing in the 90s. But if it's something that's going to last, I stayed on it. Like people will use soap. They're going to use soap and soft drinks, no matter what the economy is, and alcohol. In fact, the worst things get.
You mean rubbing alcohol?
No, drinking alcohol. The worst things get. Alcohol sales never go down in times of crisis.
Well, people drink when they're happy, and when they're sad, and when they're bored. Right. And those are the only things
that covers it.
You have.
That covers it.
That's
right.
Right.
Alcohol and soap will work.
Yeah, and if you drink too much alcohol, the soap kind of goes away.
Yes.
How about this idiot Putin still killing people in Ukraine? And people saying that this is going to continue. And it's just getting ridiculous. Finland, which borders Russia, is now joining NATO. Russia has said they were going to cut their electricity off. Number one, Finland, why do you let another country hold your electricity?
Yeah.
And number two, Dr. Paul, there has to be an end to this. This is actually getting ridiculous. Nobody's dying but innocent people.
Right. It's mostly a war on civilians from what we could see. As far as the electricity goes, Finland, Russia gives them like about 10%. It's not all of it, it's 10% of their electricity. And I think it has to do with payments because of all the embargoes and financial restrictions. Apparently, Finland either can't pay for the electricity or the Russians can't receive it, or maybe both. So there's a money transfer.
Well, I remember with the oil, they wanted to start being paid in rubles. And because of their economy went to shit, rubles aren't worth anything. That's how they were blackmailing people.
Okay. Yeah, that's the deal. Yeah, so Finland's going to join, and it looks like Sweden's going to jump in with joining NATO. Norway, I think Norway's always been a part of NATO, so that'll be the three countries right there touching Russia, part of NATO. So they're kind of surrounded.
That's why we pray for peace. And this is a good time for a wingman PSA. Freedom is being free from the need to be free. Freedom is being free from the need to be free. This has been a wingman PSA.
Thank you.
You know who came up with that? That's one of the deepest sayings I've ever heard. Because when you don't fight for freedom anymore, that's when you're free.
I didn't know that.
George Clinton from Parliament Funkadelic.
Okay. I mean, Dr. George Clinton.
I'm a Funkadelic myself, but they say a couple of the craziest things. I'll tell you another one. In their record, they said, crazier than a sex maniac in a whole house with a credit card.
They take credit cards. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about something that we are going to continue from last week. The human game. Dr. Paul, the game was you read a letter, which you're going to reread now, and people had to make a decision whether it was a white man against a black man, a Japanese against a Chinese, or a Russian against a Ukrainian. And this letter was translated or could have been translated in any of these languages. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We get the answer today, but can you read the letter again, Dr. Paul?
All right. For those who are not familiar or forgotten, here's the letter. Quote, "You people are treated here with great humanity and tenderness. You don't have hard taskmasters. You don't have many heavy burdens. You get worse by indulging too much. So much so, you become so debased. You are no longer human. Animals are better. Even dogs show gratitude to the hands that feed them. Even a dumb beast can show loyalty. Even though you have food, clothing, shelter, and all the necessities of life, you don't show thanks. All you produce is death, destruction, and fear. You ungrateful monsters."
Wow, that's pretty deep. So their choices are, if people know history, the Japanese and the Chinese have horrible history, and the Japanese treated the Chinese very bad. As you're seeing before your eyes, the way the Russians feel about the Ukrainians, and to a point that I didn't want them to make, but that's why we know in this show, there's no black and white. There's ignorance and intelligence. There's one race of people, the human race, because these are all white people killing all white people. We have to stop that. If you really think of what's happening, that's human hate that we're talking about, not the color of your skin. So that's the second one, a Russian against a Ukrainian. And the third one is a white man against a black man. Dr. Paul, take it.
All right. The author of that is basically the third one. This came from a New York City judge to an enslaved person named Tom Brandt for some transgression in the year 1742.
Wow. Wow. It could have been any of them.
Correct.
Hate is hate. Well, let's talk about something good. You know, rugby. Remember we talking about Jessica Watkins?
Yes. Now she's the astronaut on the International Space Station.
That's correct. The first black woman to do that.
Yes.
Well, how about she's a rugby champion. Well, America is getting the World Cup rugby champions in 2031.
Yeah, where are they going to do that? Do they have a location?
No, they didn't say that. But
okay,
that's how international this is becoming. And all the concussions in football, I always said it. You want to stop the concussions? Take away the helmets.
Right.
People are not going to hit with their head. People are not going to get hit in their head. And that's actually what happens in rugby. I think there are less concussions in rugby than football. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, well, I would say good luck. I wonder if it would be televised.
The revolution will be televised. Yes, in 2031, I'm sure. And in 2033, the Women's World Cup is coming here for rugby.
Oh, really?
So I love that we're getting more diverse in a bunch of things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It'll be a while before we get cricket, though.
Yeah. I don't understand that. They're playing games for like weeks, and the score is 748 to 411.
Right. I still don't get it, and people have actually explained it to me. And, I lived in the Virgin Islands, and your family's from Jamaica, so cricket really is something down there.
It's just
what I wanted to talk about really was something that you and I were discussing that's real important. I mentioned Southern University of New Orleans. I mentioned this HBCU, Historically Black College and University. Well, when I was in college, the first college I went to was New Mexico State University. I had the greatest almost year of my life back then, except I didn't go to school because you didn't have to take attendance. And coming from New York, where attendance was mandatory, it kind of gave me a little bit too much at 17, 18 years old, and I flunked out of school. Mm-hmm. Now, I took a negative and made it a positive. I loved college so much, and I didn't have a choice whether to finish or go back. None of those things. I wasn't the kind of kid could go to my father and says, "Hey, Dad, I'd like to take the year off and explore myself." No, that wasn't happening.
Right.
So anyway, I had to learn how to study because I made it through high school because I was kind of smart, but I really had to learn how to study, and that's the point here. That I actually went back to college. I went to a community college. I started studying. I did well, and I got a full scholarship to Southern University in New Orleans, continued studying, and life was much easier. I tell kids all the time, you bring A's home from school, you can pretty much get anything you want. That's the way to get what you want. But how do you study? So quickly, I'm just going to tell you, every day that you have a class, you need to restudy that material that night, 20 minutes on that class, instead of at the end just trying to pile all that knowledge into your head.
Right.
And don't think of it as studying as much as learning something. And that's the best I can tell you. But if you daily go over your notes, what you learned that same day, it sticks with you longer. And then when you do your review, it stays. I graduated with a 3.2 GPA. So what do you think, Dr. Paul? You had a lot. I'll be honest with you. You were an engineer, and your classes might have been a lot harder than mine. I didn't take underwater basket weaving.
Yeah.
I was in business, and I minored in economics.
Yeah.
But do you have any tips about studying, Dr. Paul?
Yeah, I would, if I could get a certificate in underwater basket weaving, I would do it just to have it. But I could brag on that. But yeah, cramming doesn't work. It never really worked for me. Sometimes you're in a situation where you just have to. You can kind of get over with short-term memory, but long-term, that's just not the way to go. A little bit all the time is better than a whole lot at once, particularly as you get older. Yes, there are some people in the world who do have, photographic recall that can do that. It's probably like 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 100,000. That's the exception. But, myself, I'm more of a kind of plod along and take little steps and build up. And, you just do it periodically, like Mr. Drew said, 20 minutes per class is a good amount of time for a quick review. You got to review. You can't just throw it aside and figure out, I'll get it later on. You won't, because there's always more material. There's new stuff. It's harder. So when you're young, your brain is more elastic and can absorb more things. So use it. Don't just, turn off the TV, turn off all the modern distractions. Really, they're hallucinations. Turn off your electronic hallucinations and read something for a while. If you're reading electronically, okay, that's fine. Read it. But sit down and think about what you're doing. Do the study. Paul,
undeniably, the reason you and I have become very successful in this country, even though we're Black, even though we've had things against us, no matter, we come from Harlem, big deal. I didn't know coming from Harlem was bad until I got out there and people were like, "Ooh, you come from Harlem?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, it was tough." But anyway, education was our way out. No ifs, ands, or ways about it.
Correct.
That's how Black people in America overcame all the obstacles that people threw at them, all of them. And today, if you're having a bad life, listen carefully. There is a way out. Learn something, get a degree, learn a skill, a trade, a profession that you love to do and be better than anybody else. And the sky is the limit. And that brings me to my wingman. We both were born in Harlem. We both were raised in the boroughs of New York. And I very proudly am from Carver Projects, 102nd Street, between Park and Madison, Spanish Harlem. That's where I'm from. And I'm from 60 East, and across the street, on the same block, the other building was 65, I believe, 102nd Street. Anyway, I had a friend there named Button. And Button was a little bit bigger than me, but we were close friends when we were little. So I'm talking about 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. This is back then. And the quick story is Button came up to my house one day, and my dad had boxing gloves laying around from training. And so Button and I put on the boxing gloves and we started boxing, and Button punched me right in the nose and it hurt. And all I knew is I threw down my boxing gloves and picked up a hammer and chased him out the house.
A hammer.
A hammer. Right then and there, I knew I don't want to be a boxer. It hurts to get hit. But that's my story. So I love Button. Well, not recently. I don't know. We've always kind of been in touch, but for the past 8 years, we've really been in touch. Matter of fact, every day. I send him, I'm diabetic. So I send him my diabetic numbers to let him know I'm doing okay every day. And that's something that I do for him. And he loves me and I love him. Well, why I'm telling you all this is because Buttons, his real name is Marion Brooks. Buttons has a son, and his name is Marion Brooks. And actually, he has a company, Little Buttons, and I love it. So anyway, Little Buttons is an educator, and he wrote a wonderful book called Ralphie and His Race. And the great part of this book for children, and I'll put the picture up of Ralphie and His Race right now, but the great part of this is that not everybody wins. Not everybody is number one. And this book teaches kids how to keep trying and how to be happy with maybe coming in second or third and how to keep working at something. Because even you and I, we've all failed. And believe it or not, through our failures came our greatest knowledge. Through our failures came our greatest knowledge. And I'm going to just add this in there. The true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. And that's from my uncle, Albert Einstein. So I wanted to throw that in there because it worked. Anyway, I am so proud of Marion Brooks Jr., and now I call him Little Buttons, who wrote this wonderful children's book, Ralphie and His Race. You know, it's also, he's a black kid, little Ralphie, but I told Marion, you have to learn that when you're young. You don't know you're a little black kid. You don't know you're a little white kid, Chinese kid, whatever kid.
Yeah, someone has to tell you.
Somebody told you, and then you came up with ideas that you only heard. Because in the beginning, and hopefully in the end for you and I, we just want to be happy. And that's what this show is all about.
Right. Well, that's good.
Let's pray for peace.
Pray for peace.
Thank you once again, Dr. Paul Thompson, my friend. Thank you for your love, your time, and that's something that we won't ever get back. I want to thank all the listeners, too. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dr. Paul. We're jamming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Drew, for inviting me on. Always good to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast or any of the podcasts. If you're looking at YouTube, they say smash the like button. Don't smash it. Just press it gently and use as a link to all your friends. You can also look at us on our website, wingmenshow.com, WINGMEN show, SHOW.com, altogether, wingmenshow.com. And we hope to see you in the future. Thanks again, Mr. Drew.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. May there be peace on earth and goodwill towards all men and women.